You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marnie Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Dr. Greg Hammer, reducing stress and cultivating resilience. Ladies, welcome. Oh my gosh. Today's episode, we have Greg Hammer, MD. Dr. Hammer is a recently retired professor at Stanford University School of Medicine. He's been a pediatric intensive care physician. He's a pediatric anesthesiologist. He's a wellness and mindfulness lecturer and the author of Gain Without Pain. Love that title. The Happiness Handbook for Healthcare Professionals. Dr. Hammer was the chair of the Physician Wellness Task Force for the California Society of Anesthesiologists. And he was also a former member of the Stanford Well MD initiative. And he's been a visiting professor and a lecturer talking about wellness at institutions worldwide. And he's taught this GAIN method that we're going to discuss today to medical students, residents, and fellows at Stanford. I'm just so excited that you are here. I know that your research was primarily focused on developmental pharmacology and immunology, and you had an active laboratory with multiple ongoing studies in these areas. So hopefully you can tell us some of those things. And I'm just really, really excited to have this conversation with you. So I guess I just want to start, like, how did you go from all this very clinical, doctor stuff, like all the technical parts, to starting to get into some of this wellness and mindfulness and being a more holistic, integrated physician?
Great to be with you, Marnie. I have been interested in wellness in all of its forms for many decades. I became a vegetarian when I was 18. Began meditating, sat with a bunch of guys in an ashram for several years. I didn't live there. And fast forward to my time at Stanford, burnout in medicine was becoming a really big issue. It probably has been for many, many, many years, but not really discussed until perhaps the last couple of decades. Stanford formed an organization called WellMD in order to address the problem of burnout amongst physicians. I joined that group, and the directive really was defining the drivers of burnout and then hopefully coming up with some solutions. So it's something that I've always been interested in. I'm particularly interested in the physiology of chronic stress and aging. So I think a number of threads came together in 2011 when WellMD was formed. And at some point, I was asked to give a talk on burnout at a national meeting of hospital administrators. I obliged, and that led to another request and another and another. And then I had a sabbatical. So I thought I would put my beliefs and feelings about chronic stress and burnout into a book. And that's when I wrote the Gain Without Pain book, came up with this GAIN practice, really. It's really a lifestyle practice. And that book did very well. And I'm still meeting lovely people like you related to that almost 4 years later. Amazing. I did, by the way, just finish my next book, which is really about the GAIN practice for people with teenagers. I don't know if you have teens, Marnie.
Well, Mike, I have 3 daughters, and now they're in their 20s, mid to late 20s. But I have a lot. I was just talking about this on the show, that I recently moved to a new community, and I'm in this in-between generation. So I have friends that are retired, and then I have friends that are in their 40s with teenagers. And I really feel like it is a very different landscape right now regarding mental health in teenagers. So I'm super excited that you're writing this book.
Yeah, so that has been submitted to the publisher. So anyway, that's a bit of background. I would just summarize by saying wellness, both physical fitness and mental and spiritual fitness have been a lifelong interest of mine. And medicine, has been a fantastic career. It allowed me to do the three things that I think we all need. And this becomes especially clear as we get a bit older. We need to keep learning.
Yes.
We need to be in community with others, and we need to serve. And my job provided those things rather automatically. And now that I'm on my second career, I need to have a bit more intention. That's the I in gain, by the way, is intention. And so I'm having a lot of fun with my second career. And that really is teaching mindfulness, teaching the gain practice. And the second book probably will be a third, and launching my own podcast and web-based wellness platform in January.
Oh my gosh, so cool. I love it. I love this conversation because I have had a lot of physicians who come to me as clients. And one of the things, and we'll start here, one of the things that I was struck with most was talking to one of them about feelings. And she said, my residency made it so that there was no time to have feelings, and feelings are not accepted or regarded. And they got trained out of me. And I think that, especially for so many women who are listening, I think that we all get trained up. If we want to advance or perform or do well, that feelings and wellness and our mental health sort of aren't really important. So you're the doctor. Debunk that myth. What's going on, and why is it actually probably the worst thing you could do for yourself?
Yes, of course. Well, life is very challenging. I think certainly life during medical school, residency, and thereafter presents challenge. Having children, being in a marriage, all those things are challenging and stressful. I think what we need to do is appreciate the importance of chronic stress in wellness and longevity. I think there's one thing we all want, I guess now almost 8 billion of us, and that is happiness.
Right.
Very simple. Why aren't we happier? Regardless of what's going on in our lives, that we're very well served by spending at least a few minutes a day sitting with, what is happiness, and stress interferes with happiness, and how can I reduce my stress? And really that's what the gain practice is. It starts as a 3-minute meditation in the morning, and we can talk about how the brain is wired, how we can help rewire the brain to be less stressed and happier. And that's really, really fundamentally the most important thing in our lives.
Let's talk about this. So I know you talk about this as, developing this personal resilience. I call it being able to resource internally to sort of fuel your system. So we've alluded to the gain method here. So why don't we just talk about that, and how does it rewire your brain to be able to be more resilient and resourceful and happy?
Our brains are fundamentally wired in ways by virtue of evolution that promote survival, not necessarily happiness. And that includes, first, a negativity bias. We tend to be negative. We tend to remember negative thoughts, feelings, experiences, and forget the positive ones. And the other thing is that while happiness really resides in the present moment, I think if we all kind of review our most happy moments, we're not worried about what we have to do when we get home, or what's happening tomorrow, or feeling ashamed or embarrassed about something we did or said yesterday that we'd like to take back. We're right in the present moment, whether we're, with a partner having an intimate moment, or we're walking through a forest and watching the sunlight filter through the treetops high above, and appreciating the soft pine forest floor beneath our feet. We're really right there, right then. And so the question is, how do we become more present, more able to reside in the present moment, so that we don't miss our life, almost literally? And how do we transcend this negativity bias. And that's what the gain practice is really all about. So if you want, we can just go through the practice.
Let's do it. I love it. Let's do it.
So fundamentally, we get up in the morning, we open the blinds. Hopefully there's some sunlight out there, or will be at least. And we do our morning hygiene thing, and we find a comfortable place to sit, hopefully in a quiet place, can be in a comfortable chair. And we close our eyes, and at first we focus on our breath, kind of slow, deep, deliberate breathing. We might focus on the inhalation through our nose, slow it down to a count of 3, pause to a count of 3, and then gently let the breath go without any effort through the nose or mouth to a count of 4. So we're doing this slow, deep, deliberate breathing. This activates our parasympathetic nervous system through the vagus nerve, slows our heart rate, lowers our blood pressure, really calms our body down, prepares us to be more present as we go through the gain method. And it starts with gratitude. So we're sitting quietly with our eyes closed, focused on our slow, deep, deliberate breathing. And we simply begin by taking stock of that for which we're grateful. So for me, I start by contemplating my gratitude for this day. Here I am today. I have the whole day in front of me. It's rather miraculous. It beats the alternative.
Right.
And then we can kind of, run a list of other things for which we're grateful. My loving relationship with people in my life, my dogs, my relative wellness physically. And we all have much for which to be grateful. We, see, unfortunately, others in the world who are far less fortunate than we are, living through war and famine and so on. And here we are sitting in a comfortable place with a roof over our head. So we link this with our slow, deep, deliberate breathing, our gratitude. And then we transition to the A in gain, which is acceptance, because life has pain as much as it has joy. We've all lost loved ones. I lost my son at the age of 29, 8 years ago. We all have loss. We all have pain. And, there's a formula in the book, suffering equals pain times resistance. We love formulas in medicine. The pain is there. If we resist it rather than accept it, then we increase our suffering. So,
that's a mic drop moment, Dr. Hammer.
Yes. Well, this is an age-old concept, the serenity prayer, for example. We need to discern between what we can change and what we cannot change, and learn to accept that which we cannot change. And so again, we sit with this. We may think of an uncomfortable or painful thought, feeling, or experience. And as we sit with our eyes closed, breathing slowly and deliberately and deeply, we bring this feeling closer and closer. We actually imagine opening our chest, opening our heart, bringing this uncomfortable or painful feeling into our heart and sitting with it, sort of breathing into it, if you will, breathing slowly and deeply and deliberately, breathing in this acceptance and learning to relax our body and sit with it. And then we transition to the I in gain, which is intention. And there are a number of ways we can focus on our intention. We might, as we take these slow, deep breaths, focus on what's happening right now, what our sensations are in this moment, the pressure of the chair against our body, maybe the sound of an airplane or a car going by in the distance, the slightly sweet aroma of the air that we're breathing. And so we sit with this intention to be more present. And we know that this is not the way our brains are wired. Normally, if we close our eyes and just try to focus on what's happening right now, within a few seconds, we start to drift into the future. What's the list of things I have to do today? Or again, something that happened yesterday or last week. So here we just are training our minds, really rewiring our brains to learn to be more present. So first, maybe for 5 seconds, we sort of breathe in what's happening physically right now. And then maybe next week, it's 10 seconds and then 15 seconds. And we're rewiring our brain by doing this intention practice. And then we transition finally to the N in gain, which is non-judgment, because our brains are wired to be very discerning, but beyond that, judgmental. And because of our negativity bias, we tend to judge others, the world, and notably ourselves negatively. And, this causes stress. It interferes with our ability to be happy. So here we are breathing these slow, deep, deliberate breaths through our nose, pausing, exhaling gently. And we're focused on letting go of judgment. And what I often do is picture an image of the Earth apparently suspended in space, one of these beautiful NASA images.
Love it.
And it's clear to us that the Earth is a lovely planet, but it is really neither good nor bad. The Earth does not possess the qualities of goodness or badness. It simply is the planet that it is. We can do this, walking through the forest, do a brief gain meditation, and when we get to the end of non-judgment, we can look at a tree, a beautiful redwood or majestic oak tree. And the tree is neither good nor bad, simply is the tree that it is. And so it's only logical for us to think that I too am just a person. I'm just a human being. I'm neither good nor bad. I'm neither good nor bad. I simply am. And then we link this I amness to our slow, deep, deliberate breath and sort of reside there for 30 seconds and then just return strictly to the focus on the breath and slowly open our eyes, and we're ready to go out in the world.
Okay. So how long does this take someone to do? Like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 10 minutes, as long as you want?
Yeah, you could do it in 3 minutes. You could spend, 20 or 30 seconds just sitting with the breath with your eyes closed and doing a 15 to 30 second tour of the gain elements and then just returning the focus to the breath. What happens even with a brief gain, we can call this a mindfulness meditation, is that we're actually rewiring our brain little bit by little bit. And our brains evolve the way they are. They're sort of hardwired to be rather negative and other than present over many, many, many millennia. So we're not going to rewire them overnight, but we're taking baby steps toward that direction. And what happens is, Marnie, that, we do our gain meditation, we have a cup of coffee, we get in our car to drive to work. Somebody kind of cuts us off on the road. We begin to get angry and make all these negative judgments about that driver. And then a light bulb goes off and we remember that we did our gain meditation and pledged to be non-judgmental. And so we can have a little laugh to ourselves. We get a little hit of dopamine, maybe a little hit of serotonin instead of a hit of adrenaline. And, this is how we are rewiring our brains. The next time we have a disagreement with a friend or a spouse, we start to make judgments about what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad. The more we do our gain practice in the morning, the more quickly that light bulb goes off and reminds us how silly it is and just drop the judgment. The world is as it is. Others are simply others. And we ourselves are simply the person that we are, neither good nor bad. So the more we do this practice, albeit very briefly in the morning, the more we start to have these light bulb moments. And that is propagating the process of rewiring our brains to be more positive and more present.
Love that. So because I talk to people about doing mindfulness, and I hear, I don't have time. I'm not good at it. It doesn't work for me. How do you respond to those sort of naysayers who are more focused, I would say, on the strategies or the how they're going to change things or the doing, rather than understanding the importance of this like strong foundation that you're talking about through this gain practice?
I'm forgetting who said this, but whether it was the Dalai Lama or another sage, meditate for 5 minutes a day. And if you don't have time, meditate for 30 minutes a day. So that's a paraphrase. But the fact is that, thinking about what we're going to do and so on, without a counterweight, without an active practice to think differently, then we just think in the same way that we've always thought, which is, again, we're rather negative, very distracted. So rather than think about it too much, just make a commitment to do it. So, right. I tell my trainees, set your alarm for 3 minutes earlier than you would otherwise wake up in the morning. Do this the night before. Set your intention thereby. And if you have to get up at 6, get up at 5:57. Go to bed 3 minutes earlier.
Right.
Who doesn't have 3 minutes? And then you're setting your intention. You get up in the morning and you do this. And the more you do it, the more you recognize you're sort of getting a biofeedback, and you're right. training your brain and your body really to relax, be present, be more positive. And it's a very simple but elegant process. And it's something that we benefit from embracing, and just do it.
Yeah, I think that people spend more than 3 minutes thinking about why they can't do something than the actual 3 minutes that it takes. And it's like, how many of y'all who are listening have looked up and realized you were just scrolling, watching, reels on Instagram for 35 minutes, right? So it's just the lie that we tell ourselves. So when you think about how all of this non-mindfulness creates rapid or accelerated disease or symptoms of aging, what is the data showing us around why is stillness maybe the best anti-aging cream you could buy? Whoops.
Excuse me. We can ask ourselves, what are the drivers of aging? They are oxidative injury, oxidative stress. That means, for example, when we're exposed to radiation in the environment, like sunlight, other toxins in the environment, they may cause chemical changes in our body that generate free radicals. These free radicals tend to degrade our DNA. We don't normally think about this, but our cells are dividing continuously, in some tissues more rapidly than others. And when the cells divide, the DNA, the genetic material in the nucleus of our cells, has to replicate itself. And as it does that, there's a variety of things that happen. One is there can be accidents, and we develop mutations, and these may lead to cancer or simply degradation of cellular processes that age our cells and our bodies. And so environmental exposure, oxidative injury is one thing that drives aging. Another thing that drives aging is inflammation. We know this. So there's a number of things that we can do to prevent excessive inflammation. We need some inflammation to battle infection, for example. But when we have too much of an inflammatory response, it ages us, or sometimes worse, sometimes kills us. And we know from the COVID experience, for example, it's the excessive inflammatory response to the virus that actually kills people. It's not, directly the virus. It's the way our body reacts to it. So oxidative injury, inflammatory response. And the third is chronic stress. Mm-hmm. So this is really, my area of interest. I'm interested in the other two areas too, but chronic stress does a lot of things. So for example, we have an acute stress response, and the physiology of acute stress is hardwired into our brains, if you will, and it evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to help us cope with actual threats in our environment. So imagine 150,000 years ago, our predecessors are sitting in a cave trying to keep the fire going, keep their family safe. And they benefited by being negative and wary. There could be a saber-toothed tiger lurking outside the mouth of the cave. That was a real possibility. But there were also other relatively constant actual threats in the environment. And so the ability to mount this fight or flight sympathetic response to actual threat by generating a lot of adrenaline, an increase in cortisol in the bloodstream, these increase the amount of blood that our heart is pumping, increase the sugar in our blood to get more blood delivering sugar and oxygen to our muscles so we can prepare to run or fight. So this is the acute stress response evolved over a very long period of time and was adaptive when we were surrounded by actual threats. Fast forward to today, our thoughts are what primarily trigger this acute stress response. So it's really no longer adaptive, except under very limited circumstances. You're at a pool party on a Saturday, you hear a splash, a toddler fell in the pool. It's adaptive to have this acute stress response to prepare us to jump in the pool and save the toddler. But for most of our experience, when we have this acute stress response, it's maladaptive. And it's okay to experience acute stress. The issue is, how quickly can we neutralize these physiologic changes, this increase in adrenaline and cortisol, for example, when we recognize it's not adaptive to have these responses? And so what I really call resilience in the context of aging and stress is the ability to neutralize the acute stress response when it is no longer adaptive. So something triggers us. That's okay. It's a matter of how quickly we can return to baseline, to have the adrenaline and cortisol in our bloodstream go back to normal levels. And if we can't do that, then that acute stress becomes chronic. So how does chronic stress age us? Well, that increase in adrenaline can become chronic. That actually increases our heart rate. It increases our blood pressure. It has cardiovascular injurious effects, if you will. The cortisol elevates our blood sugar, as does the adrenaline. We are at risk for developing type 2 diabetes, which certainly ages us. And so the ability to neutralize the acute stress response, this resilience, is really important for our overall well-being. So again, aging due to oxidative injury, inflammatory injury, and chronic stress, we can control all those things. But the purpose of the GAIN practice is largely to address this chronic stress and thereby increase our physical and mental well-being. And hopefully we can live a longer, healthier life.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting that that everything has the possibility to be a stressor. I mean, like you can't find your password, you log in, right? But I think that people are so focused on efficiencies, right? And like, how do I remove the problem, right? Rather than focus on how do I shift my reaction to those problems, because those problems are ever present, especially as, at least for people, I think in our generation, like, we're not native to a lot of the digital way that life is going, right? And so I just see like basic things, especially I look at like my in-laws that are like in their 80s, right? Like very basic things can become stressful for them, right? So it's not like it's going to go away. So there's like this thing like, oh, if I just remove, if I just withdraw, if I just try and manage, then I won't have stress. But that's not possible really, unless you sit in a room by yourself quietly or something.
Well, I think when we do sit in a room quietly by ourselves, we improve our skill at identifying what's happening with our bodies and our minds. And so that includes stress. So we can become more sensitive to our level of stress. And then the next step is, since we recognize that we're experiencing stress, what can we do about it? And again, going through these GAIN elements, and you could just pick one even. Let's focus on gratitude. Gratitude is a great stress reliever because it reminds us that what is stressing us is really not that important, given all the bounty in our lives, everything for which we have to be grateful. And, gratitude is intrinsic to happiness. Our empiric experience teaches us this. We could be, or can imagine somebody who's poor and happy, or somebody who's physically challenged and happy, but you can't really even imagine somebody that can be happy and ungrateful. gratitude is just part of happiness. It's a prerequisite. So
That's
go to
important.
gratitude.
That's important.
When we're experiencing the stress, let's learn how to recognize it. Remember how unhealthy it is and destructive this chronic stress is, and simply go to slow, deep, deliberate breathing. I'm walking down the hall. My manager, department chairman wanted to see me, and I'm walking down the hall and I'm wondering why. What have I done wrong? Naturally, with my negativity bias, I go to sort of negative thoughts first. He's not coming to reward me or congratulate me or tell me what a great job I'm doing. With my negativity bias, he's found something I did wrong, right? So I'm walking down the hall. I notice that I'm getting stressed. Of course, I'm anxious. I notice that my heart rate's going up. I can imagine that my blood pressure and my blood sugar are going up. And just simply going to slow, deep, deliberate breathing counteracts this acute stress response by activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So just doing that is of benefit. And then add to that, wow, I'm so grateful. I have this wonderful job. I have this opportunity to help people. I have this opportunity to work with all these other people. I have so many things to be grateful for. This is not, regardless of what my chairman wants to talk to me about, it's not going to kill me, right? So just going to slow, deep, deliberate breathing. And the more we do the gain practice, there's a Pavlovian response, right? So people remember learning about Pavlov's experiments with dogs. He paired a stimulus like the ringing of a bell with food. So the dogs are being fed. So they associate the bell ringing with food. And pretty soon, just the bell ringing, even without the food, causes this response where they salivate and so on. So these is a conditioned response between the stimulus and the response. So when we are doing the gain practice on a daily basis, we simply associate gratitude, acceptance, intention, non-judgment with this slow, deep, deliberate breathing. So we're driving a car, we're walking down the hall, we're feeling stress, we recognize that we're feeling stress. Simply go to that slow, deep, deliberate breathing practice. There's so many benefits, but one of them is that it brings gratitude, acceptance, intention, non-judgment as a part of this conditioned response. We're just like all other animals in the world. We respond to these stimuli similarly, and we can sort of develop this conditioned response, this pairing of gratitude with deep breathing, acceptance, intention, non-judgment. So just go to the deep breathing when we start to feel stressed. And really, it's quite magical. And I think elegant simplicity applies.
Definitely. Okay, last thing while we have you, I want to make sure we talk a little bit about sleep because I think that there are not very many people that are sleeping well, sleeping through the night, have different variations of insomnia. How do we sleep better? Because I know that this is also part of like the anti-aging and joy and happiness and all these things that you're talking about. And people just feel so stumped around this area, I think.
Great question. First, we have to, again, go to the recognition as we recognize when we feel stress, recognize the importance of sleep. Sleep really needs to be prioritized. The foundations of our physical well-being are sleep, exercise, and nutrition, and they're interwoven inexorably. And start with sleep. So first of all, let's practice good sleep hygiene.
Yes.
What does that mean? For example, I recognize that cup of coffee or half a cup of coffee at 1 o'clock in the afternoon was keeping me up at night. And the reason is that caffeine has a very long half-life. So if you're like me and you're very sensitive to caffeine, appreciate that caffeine has a half-life of 5 or 6 hours. That means that the cup of coffee I have at 1 o'clock results in a caffeine level in my blood and my tissues, my brain, that may peak in 45 minutes. And that 1 o'clock cup of coffee is like having a half a cup of coffee at 7 o'clock, because that's how long the caffeine sticks around.
Wow.
So half of that caffeine level is still there at 6 or 7 p.m. and a quarter of it is still there at 10 or 11 p.m. or midnight. And if you're like me, again, that it's like having a quarter of a cup of coffee before you go to bed. That would keep me up.
That would be bad. Yeah, that's not going to keep you, lull you to sleep.
Right. So sleep hygiene, first of all, avoid caffeine if you're sensitive to it after perhaps your morning cup of coffee. Alcohol also interferes with our sleep. We may be unconscious, but we're not getting the fully restorative benefit of sleep. So I would really caution people about having alcohol certainly beyond the dinner time, approximate to the time of sleep. Don't eat a heavy meal anywhere near your bedtime. That also interferes with sleep physiology. If you can, darken the room or wear eye shades.
Yeah.
I wear them. They're quite comfortable and not really noticeable, and they black out the room quite nicely. Cool your room if you can. Put away your screens well before bedtime, at least an hour. There's a number of reasons that screens interfere with good quality sleep. One is that the blue light they emit is activating. That's why opening the blinds, particularly if there's some light outside, helps wake us up, that blue light exposure. And blue light blocking glasses are not very effective, it turns out. So put your screens away. It's also what the content of your attention is right before you go to sleep, right?
Right.
So put your screens away, your phones, your tablets, computers, and even the television, proximate to the time of sleep, at least an hour if you can. So these are just a number of basic elements of good sleep hygiene. We sort of know what to do, but like so many other things in life, I think that we've hit on, we often don't do them. And then, avoid sleep medications for more than a very brief period of time. I would say exceptions are melatonin, and actually CBD, I think, has some benefits for sleep, with or without a little bit of THC, which is the active sort of a psychogenic ingredient in marijuana. I think a tiny, tiny bit of that in a CBD oil it can promote sleep without having the bad side effects. But the other sleep medications, whether they're prescription or over the counter, contain things like antihistamines if they're over the counter, and those molecules and those in benzodiazepines that people use for sleep also, they interact with a receptor in the brain called the GABA receptor, gamma aminobutyric acid, and that's how anesthetics work. So if I give inhalation anesthesia, anesthetic gas to a patient, or administer Valium-like drugs and propofol and other anesthetics, they bind to the GABA receptor and they promote unconsciousness, but they interfere with normal sleep physiology. So, if you need to take an Ambien or a half an Ambien, 5 milligrams or so once in a while, I think that's fine. But if you do it many nights in a row, you're really depriving yourself of the fully restorative benefits of sleep. So I'd throw that in there to the sleep hygiene, bag of tricks, if you will. And then if you're still having trouble, I would also encourage people to do a bit of gain meditation.
Right.
Even just the deep breathing part of it, and maybe throw in the gratitude part of it as your eyes are closed and your head's resting on the pillow. Again, this kind of counteracts and neutralizes the stress that we're experiencing that's tending to keep us awake. So there's maybe 8 or so elements of good sleep hygiene. And I think those are fairly simple to employ. I realize it might be difficult for people to give up that, little bit of single malt scotch at 9 o'clock they have with their book, which I used to enjoy, until I realized it was interfering with my sleep. The cup of coffee in the afternoon, the relatively late, rich meal with friends, because that's when the appointed time for getting together at a restaurant was. But in general, of course, we're not going to always have perfect sleep hygiene, but the more of these ideals and concepts that we can employ, the better our sleep will be. And then again, this relationship between sleep, exercise, and nutrition. When we're fatigued, we tend to eat sugary, fatty, so-called comfort foods to get a boost. I can attest to that after a night of call, that See's candy that a grateful family donated to the nursing station really hits the spot when I'm underslept, but then it makes us crash even more. And we're too tired to exercise. Exercise promotes good sleep as well. So realize the interrelationship between sleep, exercise, nutrition, and employ as much of the sleep hygiene elements as possible.
I think this is so fun because to me, like when I was, you're young and you like want to stay up as late as you can, right? And then you're like, wait a minute, I need a lot of time to wind down. I've realized, like if I need that hour, right, between all the physical hygiene and the reading my book and the meditating and the not having my phone, it does take a minute. So it's almost like you were saying you need to set your alarm 3 minutes earlier. You could also start your going to bed process a little earlier. But I think a lot of people get in that habit of like, they're thinking their screens are what's putting them to sleep. Like I'm going to watch TV till I pass out, or I'm going to watch videos on my phone or whatever it is. But it's very counterintuitive, it sounds like.
Yes. And of course, all these things are subject to the bell-shaped curve. So some people, on the one extreme of the bell-shaped curve, the screens don't keep them awake and they're fine with that. Or, that cup of coffee at 1 o'clock does not keep them. Some people can have an espresso or a cup of coffee before they go to bed and they're fine.
Oh my gosh.
So we're really talking about the middle of the bell curve, if you will, and these things that affect the majority of us. So, if you recognize for sure that one of those elements doesn't bother you, by all means, enjoy. But if you're having trouble sleeping, I would kind of shoot that list and incorporate as many of the elements as you can.
Yeah, at least do the thing where you take out one at a time and test it and see if it helps. I know for me, no more watching TV before bed and reading was like a game changer. I was just telling my daughter, I'm like, if I watch TV, I'm like thinking about those characters. But for some reason, when I read a book, I close it. And I don't care about you anymore. You're in the pages. This has been so informative and so helpful. And what I love about the GAIN method, this meditation practice, is that it is, like you said, the simplicity is what makes it so elegant, because I think what people get really tripped up on is like, breathing is weird, or the breathing part, but that's just like the one step. There's these other pieces that fit together that actually over time, like really do create this resilience and this more joy, more happiness, more peace in life. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Y'all can get, access to the book. It's greghammermd.com, but there's links in the show notes. But definitely order the book. When is your new book going to come out? I know if you just send it to the publisher, it could be a minute.
Yeah, it'll be a minute, probably next summer.
Love that. That's not too long. That's so great. So definitely get GAIN Without Pain. Be on the lookout for the new book. And ladies, the name of the show, it's Life Check Yourself. We talked about a lot of different shifts that you can make, but let's just pick one. Let's pick health, or pick the morning practice, pick the list of sleep hygiene things. Look at what you're doing to prevent aging. What can you control? And really get intentional about it, because that's one of the steps in the GAIN practice so much. Well, I am so grateful for you for being here and for sharing this really powerful material in such a easy to swallow way. I bet your bedside manner as a doctor was great, Dr. Hammer.
I hope so. I'd like to think so.
You have a very soothing, calm voice. I love it. Ladies, you can follow me. I'm super old fashioned, so you can still find me on Facebook, Marnie Batista. You can check out our website, marniebatista.com. That's 2 T's in Batista. And you can follow me on Instagram, marniebatista_. But whatever you do, make sure that you always life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. Listen, if you're feeling stuck, I want you to know you're not alone. And you don't have to settle for it. I've created a free quiz to help you pinpoint what's draining your energy and exactly how you can fix it. So head over to decodeyourdestinyquiz.com and take the 60-second quiz right now. That's decodeyourdestinyquiz.com. And if you're ready to dive deeper, you can book a free no-obligation consultation at marniebatista.com/private coaching. That's Marnie, M-A-R-N-I, Batista, B-A-T-T-I-S, as in Sam, T-A.com /private coaching, all one word. Let's take the first step to creating a life you love on your terms. I'm Marnie, and I'll see you next time.